Now, from Wish TV, your local news source, this is All Indiana Politics.
Good morning. Welcome to another edition of All Indiana Politics. Thank you for joining us after an extraordinary week in Indiana politics. So much to talk about. Let's start with that dramatic Friday at the State House. Indiana now becoming the first state in the country to pass a new abortion ban after the Supreme Court's decision to overturn Roe versus Wade. The House passed its version Friday afternoon after hours of emotional debate. The Senate agreed to it late Friday night. Our Garrett Berquist was there for all of it.
A long 2 weeks here at the State House came to a very rapid end. Governor Eric Holcomb signed the abortion ban barely an hour after it landed on his desk. The ban includes a very narrow exception for rape and incest victims, and that drove the vast majority of the debate.
Abortion is the intentional taking of a human life. The result of an abortion is the death of a child. I believe in the sanctity of life, and I believe life begins at conception. I believe life is a gift. This body has the duty to protect life.
Us sitting in this chamber, I don't know what the median age is, and most of this group being male, I just don't understand why you feel your beliefs should be put upon every woman in this state. I believe you really believe that you have the right to dictate to all young women, women of childbearing years, what they should do when it comes to the issue of abortion.
The U.S. Supreme Court made the decision to move the abortion rights to the state level, which is peeled an onion on the details of abortion, showing layers and layers of such a difficult topic that I wasn't prepared for. I wasn't prepared to debate this topic in specificity, much less in 2 weeks' time. We are moving too fast for fruitful discussion. Rushed decisions make bad decisions.
It is hard for me to articulate how it feels to stand before you in this chamber again and plead with you to let my daughters remain full people. To let your daughters, wives, and the people you serve, the people standing on the other side of that glass, live their lives with liberty, with freedom, with full, unapologetic humanity. We shouldn't have to ask for control over our own bodies.
You know, we heard support. I mean, there were doctors here, there were women here. I mean, you know, it wasn't as if there was, we didn't hear support. Got a letter the other day from 100+ doctors. I mean, so again, there was support. I understand there's a wide range of opinion. You heard it today. You heard it from members that thought we went too far to members that we thought we didn't go far enough.
For me, I feel comfortable with what I did in trying to protect the women's bodily autonomy. And I think nobody won. Even if you're pro-life, you didn't win. There was nothing that came from this that we can be proud of in the state of Indiana.
We should point out abortion is still legal in Indiana for now. The new ban will take effect on September 15th. That's one change the House made that the Senate accepted. At the State House, Garrett Bergquist, Wish TV, wishtv.com, and follow us on Facebook.
Now, in his announcement that he signed the bill, Governor Eric Holcomb said, quote, following the overturning of Roe, I stated clearly that I would be willing to support legislation that made progress in protecting life. In my view, SEA 1 accomplishes this goal. He went on to say to the people of Indiana, let me assure you that the democratic process marches on, and you should continue to reach out to all your elected representatives to have your voice heard. Now, the governor also signed the revised inflation relief plan. This one calls for $200 taxpayer rebates, less than Governor Eric Holcomb had requested, but it will be available to everyone in the state, including those who did not file tax returns this spring. It also caps the state's gasoline tax. Now to the stunning news of the death of Indiana Congresswoman Jackie Walorski. The Republican from South Bend and 2 staff members died in a crash in Elkhart County. It happened Wednesday. The sheriff there now says Walorski was a passenger in an SUV that crossed the center line and hit a second car. The driver of that vehicle also died. Jackie Walorski was first elected to Congress back in 2012 after serving 3 terms in the state legislature. Indiana senators remembered her on the Senate floor.
I, for one, am truly devastated. I know that Jackie loved the state of Indiana. She loved the Hoosiers throughout the state. She had an incredible sense of humor, incredibly smart, so talented in many ways, and she'll be missed.
All of us are on the road a lot, and you spend those hours, endless sometimes. You never imagine that one day that could happen. When I heard that, it's like the ultimate gut punch. Emma Thompson, Zach Potts, along with her, 3 Hoosiers that we will miss. It's hard to come up with the words to say, how did that happen and how do you get through it? But for most of us, and especially in my case with Jackie, one of the first great Hoosiers I got to know on my own journey. She will be missed, and our condolences to all of the families.
Meanwhile, on Capitol Hill, a tribute to the Congresswoman and the staff members, Emma Thompson and Zach Potts, her congressional office door draped in black ribbon to honor the 3. We also want to share part of the tribute from House Speaker Nancy Pelosi. She says Walorski lived a life of service, whether caring for impoverished children in Romania, representing her community in the Indiana State House, or serving nearly a decade in the House. She passionately brought the voices of her North Indiana constituents to the Congress, and she was admired by colleagues on both sides of the aisle for her personal kindness. And I also asked Indiana Republican Party Chairman Kyle Hupfer for his reaction.
No, you really just can't wrap your head around it. I mean, the tragedy of this accident with Jackie and Zach and Emma is just, it's hard to quantify. I mean, it's going to leave a huge gap in so many lives and so many efforts that all 3 were involved in that you really can't measure it.
What is Walorski's legacy in Indiana politics and government, and how do you think she'll be remembered? Well,
I think from those who had the privilege of working with her as I did, and I got the opportunity to introduce her on numerous occasions, I would always say that I look to her for an example of a fighter for what she believed in, and I think that's how she'll be remembered. I mean, she had so many causes that she was passionate about, but none more than the folks that lived in her congressional district. And her and her husband had been missionaries, and she just was always a servant leader to others. But you knew where Jackie stood on issues. She was certainly not afraid to tell you, and then she fought for what she believed in.
Yeah. And we mentioned earlier, and you mentioned it too, Kyle, that other people also died, unfortunately, in this crash. Zach Potts and Emma Thompson, you knew them as well. They worked with the Congresswoman, right?
They did. I didn't know Emma as well, but Zach, I knew better. He was also the county chairman in his home county, and the district chairman. So he sat on the Republican State Committee. So I worked closely with Zach for years, and his loss is a hard one as well. Someone that we all knew, and people don't always realize the value that these staffers bring and what a team it is for an elected official. And, these folks are out on the road. It's August recess. You don't think about how much time candidates and their teams spend driving around until you have something like this occur. And life is precious, and it can be taken away so easily.
Mm-hmm.
And all 3 of them were such dedicated public servants, and were out doing during an August recess what they do, which is going around and talking to their constituents.
Our thanks to Chairman Kyle Hupfer. Service for Representative Walorski has been set for this coming week. Visitation is Wednesday from noon to 7. The funeral is Thursday at 11 o'clock. Both will be held at Granger Community Church in Granger. We're planning live coverage for that funeral on Wish TV. All right, coming up, we bring Indiana's best political team to talk about Representative Walorski and the abortion debate next on All Indiana Politics. And welcome back to All Indiana Politics as we welcome back two members of Indiana's best political team, Tom John, former Marion County Republican chairman, and Kip Tu, the former chairman of the Indiana Democratic Party. Gentlemen, good to see you. Let's start with Indiana's ban on abortion. Did Republicans go too far here, Kip? Too fast of a push?
I really don't understand what the hurry was, and that the governor actually signed the bill late Friday night. We have a long session in Indiana, and it starts in January, and this bill was very complicated, and there's lots of things that are up in the air with regard to this issue after they passed it. It seemed hurried, and right before an election, it seems odd to me. I will tell you this much: I do believe that we're going to see a political earthquake. This issue is different than almost any issue that we've been around. When the Supreme Court overruled Roe v. Wade with the Dobbs decision, I think it started the shock waves, and we're going to see more of them come the fall.
Tom, your thoughts?
Well, the legislature, many of these members you knew that were pro-life and have been pro-life for a long time. And the change in law from the Supreme Court was going to make an effect, and there were going to be decisions to be made. I think Indiana, whether you agree with the decision or not, decided to address it head on, and the legislature went there. There's a lot of disagreement. I think there's a lot of disagreement from various parts of the state, and we'll see how it plays out, and we'll see whether it gets readdressed again in the long session next year, as Kip mentioned. But at the end of the day, they made a decision to move forward with positions that many of them had held for a long time. I do think that it's something that we see that's more complicated when you really dive into it than a lot of people have thought for the last few decades.
Right.
And so I think it'll evolve over time.
That being said, it's a complicated issue, right? So are you surprised, Tom, to Kip's point, how quickly it came together on Friday, and then right afterwards, the governor signed the bill?
Well, we know how these things go at the General Assembly and the State House when we're passing legislation. There are a lot of negotiations behind the scenes, and it's not really just the timing that you see on the video on the floor, but rather the discussions that had gone on in months or in the time prior, at least weeks prior to this, where I'm sure the governor was talking to leadership and others. I'm sure leadership was talking to their caucuses and trying to come to positions. And so I'm sure there were negotiations this week that led to something that looked like this. So it wasn't so quick as it might seem.
Right. Kip, Lilly issued a statement that raised concern that this law will hinder Lilly's and Indiana's ability to attract diverse scientific, engineering, and business talent from around the world. Is this a real concern?
Yes, it's absolutely a real concern. And I think it's not just Eli Lilly. I think it's the tech community. I think it's the legal community. I think it's young folks looking at where they want to live. We now know that millennials and the next generation care more about the sense of place than the job that they have, and they're going to pick where they want to live. And you know, for Christian conservatives, Indiana's a great place to live. But for the rest of us, not so great. And so I'm not sure people are going to want to be here.
Tom, your response? Because it's not only Lilly, the Chamber of Commerce even came out and said, hey, pump the brakes on this thing.
Well, you know, no piece of legislation is set in stone. Even if it's in the Constitution, it's subject to be changed or not changed, as we saw in Kansas. And so the fact is that, you know, those organizations, I think, can make their voices heard with the legislature coming up. And you could take a new look at this issue when you come into the next session. But I do think that there is going to be a lot of evolution over this potentially, because opinions have really not been vetted and fleshed out in the last couple of months. I think there's a lot to be heard yet.
Kip, before we go to break, you mentioned it in your first statement there, the fallout politically for this.
Well, I think that there's an earthquake coming, and I think that we've had super majorities in the Senate and the House for a long time, and hopefully this will be the end of it, so that we get back to some sort of balance in Indiana politics. I think a majority of Hoosiers are pro-choice. I think it's been consistent in every poll I've ever seen in the state of Indiana. It remains to be seen whether the election will reflect that, but I hope that it does.
We'll see what happens. Tom and Kip, stay with us. We'll have much more coming up right after this break, next on All Indiana Politics. Welcome back to All Indiana Politics as we welcome back Tom John, former Marion County Republican Party chairman, and Kip Tu, the former chairman of the Indiana Democratic Party. Gentlemen, I want to talk about the death of Congresswoman Jackie Walorski. Tom, I'll go to you first on this one. Your reaction to her death, and what is her legacy here in the state of Indiana?
Well, I mean, it was a complete shock. I mean, the Congresswoman has been a part of Indiana politics, an important part for literally 2 decades, essentially. And she is somebody who is beloved by everybody at the State House. She was beloved by everybody who's worked with her and beloved by her district. And yet she was somebody who was courageous. She would stand up. She would fight for what she believed in, sometimes against her party, sometimes even things that weren't necessarily popular for her district that she believed were best for the state. A good example of that is she was the 51st vote on the Indiana Toll Road. Being a Northern County person, that was not an easy vote to make. But not only did she make that vote, but then she got elected to Congress. And then you look at that district when she came there, and, you know, it was a district that was really toss-up, and she went and worked hard. And then after winning the election, worked even harder as the representative of that district, and was somebody who really will be missed in Indiana politics. And her legacy will be as somebody who did the right thing, and on a personal note, somebody who every time you would see her, she would literally be somebody that her personality would fill the room and light up the room, and that you couldn't help but enjoy and appreciate having been with.
We had her in studio not too long ago. Yeah, she had a big personality. Kip, to Tom's point, she never held back, by the way, too. She let you know what she was feeling. Your thoughts on this sudden death? Just a tragedy, Kip, regardless of what side of the aisle you're on.
Yeah, precisely. I mean, it's a horrible tragedy. It does. I want to echo the comments of Chairman Hupfer of the Republican Party with respect to, how horrible it is, but also how horrible it is that we lost 2 staffers. The folks that don't get as much recognition, but do the hard work. Both Tom and I have been those staffers, have made those drives, made long drives. We've both been very familiar with the highways and byways of Indiana, and our heart goes out also to the families of those staffers. It's a terrible tragedy that we lost Jackie. I got to know her when she was a state legislator. We didn't agree on very much, but she was honest. She was earnest. She cared about people. She cared about the state of Indiana, and it's just a tragic loss for everybody.
Tom, 30 seconds left. Close us out with your final words on Congresswoman Jackie Walorski.
Well, she was somebody who I think that will be remembered by many, and Kip mentioned her staff that we lost in this. All of her staff people have always been amazing staff people I worked with when I've done things. And I think that's a credit to a person, is the type of people they attract, and she always attracted great people, and I think she was a great person.
There you have it, gentlemen. Thank you very much for joining us. We really appreciate it. We'll talk to you soon, and we'll be right back. Thank you for joining us for All Indiana Politics on this Sunday. We'll be back here next Sunday morning at 9:30. You can also find our brand new All Indiana Politics podcast. It's part of the All Indiana Podcast Network over at wishtv.com. Have a great rest of your weekend, and remember, we'll be keeping a close eye on the fallout over the abortion ruling coming up throughout the week over on wishtv.com.